Welcome, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I thought I knew the woman I married, until the day I discovered the secret she had been hiding for years. What unfolded over the next few weeks turned my entire world upside down, forcing me to face truths I never saw coming. My wife and I have been married for 10 years. Over the years, we've shared countless memories, overcome challenges, and built a family we both cherished deeply. Or at least I thought we did. Together, we have two beautiful children. Ethan, our 5-year-old son, who has my sense of adventure, and Lily, our 2-year-old daughter, whose smile can light up the darkest room. I believe we were happy. Even when times were tough, I always thought we were committed to pushing through the struggles and imperfections that come with marriage. But now, I'm not so sure. 4 weeks ago, my entire world turned upside down. My wife, Janet, who had always been present and attentive, began to act differently. At first, I brushed it off as stress or exhaustion. After all, managing a household and raising 2 young kids is no small feat, and we both juggled our fair share of responsibilities. But then I noticed something peculiar. She was glued to her phone more than usual. In the past, she would scroll through social media or text friends occasionally, but this was different. Her phone became a constant companion, almost an extension of her hand. She'd laugh or smile at her screen in a way that seemed intimate. At first, I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself it could be anything, maybe a funny meme from her friends or a work-related chat. But deep down, a knot began to form in my stomach. It wasn't just the amount of time she spent on her phone that unsettled me. It was how secretive she became. Janet had always been a private person, but now it felt like she was actively hiding something. If I walked into the room while she was on her phone, she'd immediately lock the screen or turn it face down. She started taking her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. Conversations between us became shorter and less engaging. When I asked her how her day was or if everything was okay, her answers felt distant. "Fine," she'd say, without meeting my eyes. One night, we were sitting on the couch after putting the kids to bed. Janet was scrolling through her phone, and I was watching a movie. I glanced over at her, hoping to share a moment of connection, but her focus was elsewhere. Her lips curved into a small smile, the kind of smile she used to reserve for me. And then, just as quickly, she caught herself and locked her phone. It was subtle, but the act felt deliberate. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she reconnecting with an old friend? Planning a surprise? Or was it something else entirely? I wanted to ask her about it, to confront the growing unease, but I was scared of what the answer might be. So I did nothing, at least for a while. The final straw came one night after she had fallen asleep. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a whirlwind of doubt and suspicion. Her phone was on the nightstand, its screen dim but tantalizingly close. I felt a pang of guilt for even considering what I was about to do. Trust is the cornerstone of any marriage, and invading her privacy felt like crossing a line. But the unanswered questions were eating away at me. I needed to know the truth, whatever it might be. I reached over carefully, making sure not to wake her, and picked up her phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. The screen lit up, revealing a flurry of notifications and open messages. As I scrolled through, my heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it even in her sleep. What I found confirmed my worst fears. As I scrolled through her phone, a dark and devastating truth began to unravel before my eyes. It wasn't just a fleeting infatuation or harmless flirtation. It was a full-blown affair that had been going on for years. Years. The messages between her and one of her co-workers painted a picture of betrayal so profound that it felt like a physical blow. There were explicit texts, words she had never shared with me, things I never imagined she would say to anyone else. They were intimate, raw, and disturbingly detailed. My chest tightened as I read through them, each message pulling me deeper into the abyss of heartbreak. The texts were peppered with declarations of love, private jokes, and plans for the future. They referred to secret trips they had taken together, trips I thought were late nights at the office or out-of-town conferences. All the while, I was at home with the kids, juggling bedtime routines and dinner prep, believing she was sacrificing for her career. Then there were the photos. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the images. Pictures of them together in places I didn't recognize, looking happier than I had seen her in years. Selfies with her leaning into him, smiling in ways she hadn't smiled with me in ages. I felt my stomach churn at the sight of them. These weren't just snapshots. They were memories, proof of a life she had been living without me. The more I uncovered, the more my hands trembled. My heart was racing, pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. It felt like the walls of the room were closing in, suffocating me. I wanted to stop looking, to put the phone down and pretend I hadn't seen any of it. But I couldn't. It was as if I needed to absorb every detail, every painful truth, to understand just how deep the betrayal ran. Sleep was out of the question. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark, consumed by a storm of emotions: anger, heartbreak, confusion, and even self-doubt. Had I been blind to this all along? Was I so caught up in the day-to-day grind of work and parenting that I missed the signs? Or worse, was I somehow responsible? Did I fail her in a way that pushed her into someone else's arms? These questions spiraled endlessly, offering no answers, only more torment. By the time morning came, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to confront her, no matter how difficult it would be. I waited until the kids were occupied, not wanting them to hear the conversation that would undoubtedly change their lives too. My voice trembled as I called her into the living room. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and mild concern, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. "I know," I said, barely able to get the words out. "I saw the messages on your phone." Her face immediately shifted. At first, she tried to play it off, feigning ignorance. "What messages? What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone defensive, almost dismissive. But I wasn't backing down. I pulled out my phone and started reading aloud the texts I had seen, my voice breaking with emotion as I recited her words to another man. Her reaction was instantaneous. The color drained from her face, and her eyes filled with tears. She looked like a dam about to burst. I can explain," she stammered, but the words sounded hollow even to her. She knew there was no explaining this. Finally, she admitted it. She confessed to everything: the affair, the lies, the years of deceit. She said it started 4 years ago, long before our youngest was even born. My stomach sank further at that revelation. While I was excitedly preparing for the arrival of our second child, she was building a life with someone else. Her justifications began pouring out in a desperate attempt to make me understand. "You were distant," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We were struggling. I felt alone, like you didn't see me anymore." Her words felt like knives, each one twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. I couldn't believe she was trying to shift the blame onto me, as if my shortcomings somehow validated her betrayal. Nothing she said could excuse what she had done. Yes, our marriage had its rough patches. What marriage doesn't? But I had always believed we were in it together, committed to working through the struggles. I never imagined she would turn to someone else instead of turning to me. As she spoke, I couldn't help but notice the way she looked at me. There was regret in her eyes, but also fear. Fear of what her actions had done to us. Fear of what might come next. She promised to end the affair. and asked me for forgiveness. But trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight, especially when it's been shattered so completely. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the need to uncover the full extent of her betrayal. The messages and photos were damning, but part of me clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation, some shred of misunderstanding. I had to see it with my own eyes, even though deep down I already knew the truth. One morning, after she left for work, I decided to follow her. It felt wrong, dishonest even, but at that point, trust was already shattered. I drove a safe distance behind her, my heart pounding with every turn. I kept telling myself I was doing this for clarity, for answers, but the pit in my stomach told me I wasn't ready for what I might find. Her day seemed normal at first. She parked at her office, walked in, and stayed for most of her shift. But as the workday ended, the nightmare began to unfold. She emerged from the building, but she wasn't alone. She walked out arm in arm with him, the man from the messages. My breath caught in my throat. They were so casual, so comfortable with each other. They didn't even try to hide it. They strolled across the parking lot, smiling and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. The sight was devastating. It wasn't just the physical closeness that hurt, it was the way they looked at each other, with the kind of connection I thought we had. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I watched them get into his car. I stayed far behind as they drove off, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me so brazenly? They pulled into the parking lot of a restaurant, a cozy little place with dim lights and private booths. My chest tightened as I parked nearby, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid being seen. Through the window, I could see them seated at a table, laughing, holding hands, and leaning into each other. They looked like a happy couple, like two people deeply in love. I sat in my car, frozen in place, watching the scene unfold like a cruel movie I couldn't escape. Each laugh, each touch, each shared glance felt like a dagger to my heart. The reality of it all started to sink in. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was something deeper, something that had been nurtured and sustained over time. It was a life she had chosen to build outside of our marriage. But the ultimate blow came when I discovered just how far their relationship had gone. A few days later, I learned they had been renting an apartment together near her workplace. This wasn't just a hotel room for the occasional rendezvous. This was a home, a place they shared when she was supposedly working overtime. I couldn't resist the pull to confirm it for myself. One evening, I parked a few blocks away from the address I'd uncovered and waited. Sure enough, after her shift, they arrived together. They walked into the apartment like it was the most natural thing in the world. Watching them disappear behind that door felt like the final nail in the coffin of my trust. For the next 4 nights, I found myself returning to that street, each time hoping, foolishly, that things would be different. But the routine never changed. They'd arrive together, sometimes carrying groceries, sometimes laughing over something one of them had said. They were living a life I wasn't a part of, a life she had meticulously hidden from me. The hardest part was realizing how seamlessly she had woven this double life. While I was at home caring for our children, she was building a future with someone else. The thought of her spending time in that apartment, creating memories with him while I believed she was working late, made me feel like a fool. The life we had built together felt like a lie, and I was left wondering how long it had been crumbling without me noticing. By the 4th night, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep sitting in the shadows, watching the life she had chosen over the one we had built. It wasn't just painful, it was soul-crushing. I didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, I went through the house like a man possessed. Every piece of her life in our home, the clothes, the shoes, the sentimental trinkets she had accumulated over the years, went into bags and boxes. I packed her belongings with a mix of fury and heartbreak. Every item a reminder of the life we had shared and the person I thought she was. There were moments when I had to stop, my hands trembling as memories flooded back. The dress she wore on our anniversary, the scarf she bought on our last family trip, all tainted now by the shadow of her betrayal. By the time morning came, the back of my car was filled to the brim. I barely recognized myself as I looked in the mirror before leaving. My face was etched with exhaustion and anger, but there was also a grim determination. I knew what I had to do, no matter how messy or public it might get. I drove to her workplace, my mind racing with what I was about to do. The thought of her walking out arm in arm with him again, as if nothing had happened, made my blood boil. She had desecrated our marriage and betrayed the family we built. Now, she would face the consequences. When I arrived, I parked across the street waiting. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, rehearsing the confrontation in my mind. Then, like clockwork, she appeared. She stepped out of the building, laughing with a group of coworkers. She seemed carefree, as if the lies she had spun hadn't torn someone else's life apart. I couldn't hold back anymore. I threw open the car door and began unloading her things, one box at a time. As she turned and saw me, her laughter faded, replaced by a look of shock and panic. I dumped everything on the sidewalk, right there in front of her and her coworkers. Clothes spilled out of the bags, personal items scattered across the pavement. It was chaotic, messy, and completely unlike me. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're not coming home," I said, loud enough for everyone around to hear. My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. "This is your life now. You made your choice, and it wasn't us." Her coworkers froze, unsure whether to intervene or walk away. Some whispered amongst themselves, stealing glances at the unfolding drama. Her face turned pale, and for the first time in a long time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She tried to speak, but I didn't let her. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I asked, my voice rising with emotion. "Do you even understand what you've destroyed? Our family, our trust, everything we've built together, it's all gone because of you." She started to cry, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I had spent too many nights crying in silence, too many mornings waking up with the weight of her betrayal pressing down on my chest. Now, it was her turn to face the reality of her actions. After dumping the last box, I got back into the car and drove away, leaving her standing there amidst the wreckage of her double life. My heart was pounding, and my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. A part of me felt liberated, as if I had finally taken back control of a situation that had spiraled beyond my grasp. But another part of me felt hollow, like I had just burned the last bridge to a life I thought I wanted. Since that day, I've taken decisive steps to move forward. I filed for divorce immediately, refusing to prolong the inevitable. My focus now is on protecting my children and giving them the stability they deserve. I'm fighting for full custody, determined to shield them from the fallout of her actions as much as possible. They deserve better than a mother who could so easily shatter the foundation of our family. She's been begging me to forgive her ever since, calling and texting constantly. She says she doesn't want to lose the family we built, that she's willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. But her words feel empty to me now. How can I forgive her when every memory of us is tainted by her betrayal? How can I trust her when she spent years lying to my face? Friends and family keep asking me if I regret how I handled it. They've replayed that moment in their minds, dissected every detail of the public humiliation I subjected her to, and questioned whether it was necessary. Did it really have to happen that way? Was it fair to air out our private pain so openly? And every time, I wrestle with my answer. The truth is complicated. Yes, I regret it. On some nights, I replay the scene in my head, her stunned face, her belongings scattered on the sidewalk, the whispers of her co-workers echoing around us. There are moments when I cringe at my own actions, wishing I could have handled it with more dignity, more restraint. But then, there are other nights when I remind myself that she tore our family apart. Her betrayal wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a calculated, years-long deception. The least she could do was face some accountability for the chaos she unleashed. In the midst of all this, I've started attending therapy. It was a decision I made not just for myself, but for the kids. They deserve a father who is present, patient, and whole, not someone consumed by anger and bitterness. Therapy has been a lifeline, a place where I can untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside me. I've learned that it's okay to feel everything, the sadness, the anger, the regret. It's okay to grieve the life I thought we had, even as I work to build a new one. Therapy has also helped me see that my reaction, as messy as it was, came from a place of deep pain. It doesn't excuse my behavior, but it helps me understand it. My priority now is the kids. They didn't ask for this. They didn't deserve to have their world turned upside down by decisions that weren't theirs to make. Every choice I make is for them, to give them stability, to shield them from the chaos, to show them that love doesn't have to hurt. It's not easy. There are days when I feel like I'm failing them, like I'm not enough. But then I see their smiles, hear their laughter, and I remember why I'm doing this. They're my anchor, my reason for getting up in the morning when it feels impossible. As much as it hurts, I know they're better off with me. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm committed to being the parent they need. I can't trust someone who lived a lie for so long to put their needs above her own. That's not a risk I'm willing to take. People ask if I'll ever forgive her, and honestly, I don't know. Forgiveness feels like a mountain I'm not ready to climb. Right now, all I can do is focus on healing for myself, for the kids, for the life we're trying to rebuild. If this story had you hooked, make sure to like, share, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories that will keep you coming back for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.